We're back again with another, what I guess we call office hours with the VMware Cloud Customer Success Team. This week we have a very good special speaker, Paige Clapper, who's on our customer success team. She looks after our AppDefense SaaS product. Paige, can you go ahead and maybe just give us a brief intro of yourself?
Yeah, I'm Paige Clapper. I'm a customer success architect, and right now I work with the production app defense customers.
All right, so what we're going to do this week is we're going to do a little bit of an overview of the product, and I promised everybody, and I know I promised everybody, not a lot of PowerPoint, so we're going to try to get through that fairly quickly. But just as this is such a new service, we thought we'd kind of give everybody the detail out there, and feel free to ask questions at any point, either in the stream chat or tweet it at me at vcloudmatt. Page is from 1970 or something and doesn't want Twitter. Um, Maybe she's got an probably got an Instagram or something that you can.
Yeah,
Hit her.
Instagram's
What do you
cool.
call that? Insta at me, or I don't even know. That's how old I am. Uh,
Insta me? I don't
Insta,
know.
yeah. I don't know what the equivalent of tweet at me is for Instagram, but
Put it on the gram.
put it on the gram. There we go. We just made that up. Okay. Anyway, so we're gonna go through a lot of the PowerPoint, and then we're gonna get into a live demo environment. We might have a little blank screen for a little while where we just log in because she has some access to some customer stuff we do not want to show off. So we're gonna switch and then show our own internal environment and go through some of the features and what this product and stuff can do for you. You can also tell that the customer success team likes to have a lot of fun. A lot of very smart, intelligent people on the team, but we like to enjoy our work. So, Paige, if you want to get right into it, go ahead.
Yeah, cool. So today I just put together a few slides, and basically it goes over the initial deployment process and just some basic features that you'll see, and then we'll switch over to the live environment and I'll walk you through what you can find there. So this is a question I get all the time is why do we buy AppDefense? And we actually didn't. So it's a homegrown product. We made it internal to VMware. And under Tom Korn, who is the Senior Vice President for Securities at VMware, he started a team, and based off of what we could do with NSX, they wanted to grow that sort of ability into protecting application specific. And VMware has a really good vantage point for this because we own the hypervisor layer too. So that enables us to better protect your VMs that you're running with VMware as well. Okay, so just some basic overview, whitelisting versus blacklisting. I'm sure a lot of you know what this is, but for anyone who doesn't, whitelisting, essentially what we're trying to do with AppDefense is find the intended application process that you want. So what we'll do throughout the process is learn what the application is doing, and then you as the customer can decide if that's the intended state you want to keep it in, and then everything outside of that will be alerted or blocked or whatever remediation action you choose to do. Whereas blacklist is going after a lot of the known bads, which is always a defensive and never offensive because the known bads are always changing. And so it's very hard for us to keep up with that. Whereas if we know the intended state of an application, we can block everything, whether it's a new bad process that's trying to get in. So next is basically just the overview of the install. So this is what App Defense would look from a pictorial, obviously, in your environment. But essentially, you have installed an appliance to every vCenter. And with that appliance, you also have the option to integrate NSX or VRA or Puppet. And some interesting things you can do with VRA and Puppet is when I get into the scope creation section of this, you'll be able to see that VRA and Puppet will actually automatically create scopes for you. And a scope is a data center application. So it'll identify those applications you already have in your environment, and then it'll automatically update that into AppDefense, which is very, very helpful because I would say the scopes and service section of AppDefense, you really have to understand what your application is doing. And if you don't, it's great to have tools like this that know that for you. And then you do have a module installed on the host as well, and then the guest or the VM module install. And then the App Defense Manager is a cloud manager. So you access this over your web browser. I should also mention actually with NSX, excuse me, with NSX, you can create custom policies for remediation actions as well. And that's something you can only do with NSX. So through a policy that you create in, I'm forgetting the word. Is it service
You're thinking about the
composer? Service composer, yeah.
service
It,
insertion?
through NSX, through Service Composer in an
Oh,
NSX,
oh
you
yeah,
can
service
create a
composer.
custom
Yep.
policy. Yeah,
Okay.
that works with App Defense. So you'll be able to have a little bit more granular of a remediation action based on your integration with NSX as well. Okay, so this is the basic, and I really will highlight basic deployment process because we do work with many different applications in this. Not every application is going to fit into this 4-week time period. But I would say for most of the regular applications you see, like Active Directory or a file server or let's say Exchange, those kind of applications, you're going to see will probably fit into this 4-week span. So essentially, the first week will be the deployment. I wrote call here. This is just what I use with my customers when I'm deploying. Essentially, it can take up to 90 minutes, normally a little bit faster. It just depends on if you have gone through all the prerequisites for App Defense first, and that will definitely speed up your deployment. So through that, you deploy the appliance into vCenter, deploy the host modules through the App Defense UI, which I'll show you at the end in the demo, and then also deploy the guest module through VM tools. And then following that would be a scope creation. So first, prior to that call, again, you'll want to go through the prerequisites and then also the best practices to set up your scopes, which I'll touch on a little bit today. But essentially, the scope creation could take a little longer than this if you haven't pre-identified the scopes that you want to create or the application, data center applications that you want to put into scopes. Okay, and then week 2, you actually don't need to do anything for week 2. For the next 2 weeks, you will just let the App Defense learn your applications. So it's a minimum of 14 days that you want to keep the application in here. And the way that we determine whether an application is ready or not is based on the number of behaviors it's learning every day. So if it gets down to around 1 or 2 behaviors each day, then it's pretty good to move to the next stage. If not, then it will need to stay in this discovery process for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think just to jump in real quick, I think that might be the best value of this because I mean, when you go, I know a lot of security people, and I know when I talk to application owners and you say, hey, what does your app do so I can secure it? They usually are like, hmm.
Yeah, actually, we have customers who find that they're running stuff that they thought they had gotten rid of like 2 years ago. So customers will be like, wait, how is that agent still running in here? We uninstalled that. And there was a still mingling process that had been running from those deleted agents a long time ago. So this is definitely, I think, surprised people the most about this tool is like, I think the end all be all goal is to protect the application, but the what you learn about the application and every behavior that it has and process is really helpful in my opinion. And also we've seen that with the customers that we've used App Defense with as well. But yeah, so I think an important part of this too is it's not just the well-known applications that we support. If you have an internally built application too, App Defense will definitely be able to protect that as well. Okay, and so week 4 and beyond, you'll repeat the steps from the previous weeks if the application needed to stay in discovery mode for longer. And then following that, you will check alarms and tune them before you start to do a remediation action. And what I mean by that is if for some reason an allowed behavior that you want to be in the intended state of that application didn't make it in, you'll get an alert on it, and then you can just add that to the allowed behavior before you do anything like blocking or snapshotting, or quarantining a VM if an action happens. Okay, so week one, this is the part where I'll go over basically what I mean about the scopes and service setup. So in AppDefense, you have the scope, which is the data center application, and then the service being a tier of that data center application. And essentially, we want it to look like this, right? And within this, you'll have two things. You'll have a process behavior and then also members, which we call VMs, and we also support containers as well. So essentially, what you want the members to be is homogeneous. You don't want them doing different processes. For one, this is not best practice for security in general. And number two, because our remediation action is based on the service, if these two are doing different behaviors, that could cause you not to be able to block a certain behavior you don't want in for one of these VMs to perform. So this is actually an example that I've seen. Essentially, a customer set up a file application and just had two VMs supporting this application, so they decided to put it in the same service. However, each of the VMs was doing something completely different. And when we removed this VM to the other service, we actually have to go through the discovery process again. So it can take a lot longer before you get to that protected mode if you don't set the scopes up to begin with by best practice. So really important to read the best practices on this. And then also here's a pictorial of what would be best practice in terms of setting it up separately into different services. And you can have as many services as you want. And you can also have a 1-to-1 ratio with the VM. So a lot of people are afraid to just put one VM in one service, but that works if that VM is the only one doing those certain processes. And then, like I mentioned, you'll have a behavior count for each of these. So you'll see the process and the actual behavior within the process. And behavior, I mean, is an in and outbound connection. So you'll see the IP addresses that it's hitting and on what ports. And then you can create remediation actions based on those different services. In some cases, you might not have a remediation action, and you might just want to be alerted on if something is different and you don't want anything to actually change in the environment. Okay, cool. So week 2 to 3, this is really at the end of week 2 and 3. What we're going to do is, oh, I'm not going to show that one. Sorry. What we're going to do is verify behavior. So I'll actually show that in the tool right after this. And then after you've verified that behavior, so essentially gone through the unknown behaviors, because AppDefense classifies most of the behaviors for you. So essentially, we'll let you know if these are verified known behaviors. And the only ones we want you to check is if it has a bad reputation or if it needs to, or if it has an unknown reputation. So those are the only two, and that's a very small subset of the actual list of behaviors that you're going to get. And then following that, once you've identified that those are all okay and you know what those processes are, then you put it into protected mode. And then from there, we triage the alarms to make sure that none of them show allowed behavior that you actually want in there. Okay, so actually, we'll just jump in now to the tool and I'll just show you what I'm talking about because I think it's hard to visualize some of these steps in between without seeing it. So I'm gonna stop sharing. And hopefully that was light enough on the PowerPoint.
I think that was. It was only 11 slides, I believe.
Wow.
Which I'm not sure what our quota
right
is, but
okay. Let me know when you can see that, Matt.
I can.
Okay, awesome. So this is our customer success org. We actually have nothing in protected right now, but we do have one alarm, which I can show you when we go through that. This would be the initial dashboard that you see when you log in, and this gives you your overall coverage. So 65 unassigned VMs means that they're not in a scope or a service. And then 4 VMs are in discovery, meaning that there's 4 VMs in these scopes over here, and then 0 protected VMs. None of these are in protected mode. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do when you log in is you would go to downloads. So this is where you'll get the appliance download. And from there, then you go and you install this into vCenter. And then as soon as you install it, you'll be able to see your inventory pop up here. And from this, if you want to update, if you want to install the host module, then you would just click this button and it will have the latest version of AppDefense on, and then press confirm.
Paige, just a quick question, seeing for my own
Yes.
knowledge set here I'm assuming multiple vCenters is available. Is there a limit or?
No, there isn't a limit that I know of, but yes, multiple vCenters are allowed. I think one request that we've gotten a lot is some customers, because this syncs with all of the hosts in your environment, it'll show those. And so what we're working on is for you to be able to take the hosts that you'll never have in AppDefense and hide those. Because you might end up having a long list of hosts here, especially if you're using multiple vCenters. So that's something that we're working on for the future, but yeah, there's not a limit that I'm aware of.
Yeah, that's good to know. What about like a ESX version? Does it go to
Yes.
6? Okay.
Yeah, so there you have to be on 6.5. And if you have Microsoft OSs for your VMs, they need to be on hardware level 13 and VM tools needs to be installed. So those are the 3 things for Microsoft. And then we do support some versions of Linux. It's a long list. So you can check the documentation on VMware docs too to see which Linux ones we support, but hardware level 13 is only for Microsoft OS.
It's good to know. Just another reason for everybody to get off those 5.5, 6.0 hosts and up to 6.5. We are at 6.7 here, people. So 6.5 isn't that new. It's not that new.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So you can see here 6.5, and actually, now that you mention that, it will say unsupported here if you're not on the latest 6.5. So that will show up, and you won't be able to do the installs on these, for example.
And another silly question does this require a reboot then of the host, or is this just something that goes in and is active immediately?
No, so when you install this, the host module will reboot on its own, especially if you're doing an update, but not the physical host. For the VMs, however, though, once you do an update, it will require a reboot. So we really actively try and find a good window for customers, if they have a service window, to deploy the VM modules.
That's very good to know.
Yes. But again, you can do the same with the VMs, is just update from here. I should mention too, if it's the first time install, you need to enable guest integrity first, and then you can do the install of the module. And then following that, what you'd be able to, well, I should mention too, when the appliance goes in, then you can add your appliances here as well. And then you'll start to see the inventory, like I just mentioned, for the hosts and the VMs. And then following that, you can set up your scope. So to set up a scope, you come here and you type it, the name, what it's going to be, create. And then this is where you add the services too. So you name it, and then we have a service type down here. And of course, it doesn't include all of them. This is really for your classification and how to have organization. And then maybe if you have a new security person coming in, then they can kind of identify, oh, this is a, I don't know, app server, and these processes seem pretty regular for an app server or not. So it's really for your internal classification. And then you can put a description. And then as soon as you do that, let me just do this. You can add members. So the list of members will be here into that service. And again, these members should be homogeneous. So doing the same processes as far as you know. And if you don't know, AppDefense is also a great tool to teach you that. So you'll be able to see what these VMs are doing and understand really each process and behavior. Because, like Matt mentioned in the beginning, I think there's a lot of people who don't fully understand what the application is supposed to do or is doing. They know what it's supposed to do, but it might not actually be doing that. So this is a really good learning tool as well. So if you don't need to get to the protected mode very fast and you really want to learn what your application is doing, that's definitely a valid use case as well to understand. And then as soon as you click the members, you can actually add allowed behavior here if you want, if you know something that's allowed. But it's really not necessary because it will learn that over the next few weeks.
Another silly question here, Paige. Can a VM be a member of multiple services?
Not yet.
Okay.
So it will, we're creating shared services because essentially I think there are a bunch of VMs that will support, multiple different applications. And the shared services one, then that VM can be a part of multiple services, but not yet. And I think so. This is what the behaviors look like when you go through that 2-week learning process, and you can kind of see how many days this scope has been in discovery. So 90 days for this one. That pretty much means this behavior count's not going to go much higher. And the verification process, like I mentioned before, is going to be processed with network behavior, reputation score bad, and there's 0 processes with that, and then reputation unknown. With the unknown ones, you're going to want to just verify that this is normal. This is a system update, so it probably just has a wide range of IPs for updates, in which case this is definitely a known behavior, and then you would put verify and protect. And as soon as you put in verify and protect, I'm just going to do this one, nothing changes. So I think a lot of customers think that immediately it will start blocking things. Nothing's going to change until you set the rules. So you can enforce outbound connections, inbound connections, enforce guest OS integrity or app defense module integrity. So these two have to do with the behaviors, and then this is the integrity of the modules. And we have a number of different remediation actions you can do: block and send alert, snapshot, power off, suspend, and quarantine. All of these will send an alert. Block and send alert just says that because it will actually block first and then send the alert afterwards. And then alert, I should also mention, doesn't do any physical action like the rest of these, but it lets you know when that intended state that you've set into protected mode has deviated.
So it might be worth having alert on for a little bit before.
Yes,
You
so
go
that's
to.
why I said the tune application portion. You want to wait, I would say 1 to 2 weeks to make sure that all the allowed behaviors that you want is in there. And then you can, of course, run tests after this as well. I think most of my customers, we do that first.
So, and maybe you're going to show this for us, but I'm curious. So when it shows what is the alert type? Is that an SMP trap? Is an alarm in here? How do you get notified that there has been an alarm?
Yeah, so you have to log in right now for AppDefense, but we really highly recommend, if you're using a SIM tool already, to integrate with that SIM tool. We do integrate with Splunk right now, as well as a few others, and we're working on integrating with a wider range coming up in the next few months. So essentially those would send you the active alerts. And I think there's a lot of benefits to integrating with your SIM tool as well, because it will give you context to the application that you've never had before for your other security products as well when you integrate. And so the active alerts here, when I say alert, I think a lot of people get confused about that. There is no active email. You'll just see it show up in this page, or there will be a red dot next to your scope. And that means that there's an alert on this particular scope.
So can you action the item from this as well? Then if you click that alarm we have there, what do we get when we click on that?
Yeah. So
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
this is not a great example, because essentially what you would normally see from an alert is you would see the known behavior as well. This is actually a guest module down. So essentially, this guest that had been installed, um, AppDefense hasn't received a heartbeat from it in the last 15 minutes, and so it's guest module down. These are pretty important ones to look at, and it does give you this information. But the other alarms that you'll most likely see will have a new port has been hit or a new IP address has been hit, and then you'll be able to see the learned behavior.
And
And
up in the top there's the same
yeah,
remediation actions you see in everything else. So you can right here you can just go ahead
yeah,
and do what you want to it.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so but this has already happened. So this would be from this point forward.
We should turn this off on VibeOff. Actually, this might be our
So
vCenter database. Let's not do that.
yeah, I don't think we should do that. But also so another thing you can do here is we can look at guest module down in SQL Server. And so you can go in here and look at the members and see they're both active. So actually this VM has come back online and you can clear that alarm. And you just go boop, clear, meaning it's not needed anymore. Also, when you get an alert too, I wonder if I just add a VM into mine. Let me just do this. Hmm. All these are unsupported.
So, for anybody that's curious, you can now see that we actually do work in our lab. So, if my manager's watching, it's a worthwhile investment for us. There is a
Yeah,
lot of stuff
well,
in
this
here.
is probably my fault because I haven't. Yeah, so
Just use CentOS test 2, or that's unsupported version. Okay.
yeah, okay, so those are all unsupported, but essentially, I wish we could show an active alarm for this. The only ones I have are from customers. But yeah, I guess I'll just have to paint a picture for you. I'll put these back in Discovery afterwards. Um, Essentially, you would see the alarms here. And if you have a bunch here that are, let's say you did a service upgrade and for some reason the VMs were offline for longer than the AppDefense heartbeat connection, which is about 15 minutes, you'll probably see some guest module down alarms here, and you just click this button and it will, and then just clear all of the alarms. You can't do that for allowed behavior, however, for some pretty obvious reasons of we don't want you to allow bulk behavior at the moment just because you might be allowing something that's not necessarily good as well. But as soon as you click into an alarm, there'll be a little box like this that will say allow behavior, and that will immediately go to this behavior list that you have over here, which is what we call the intended state of the application.
So,
So
so
you'll be able
maybe
to see
maybe you
that.
touched on this earlier a little bit, Paige. But so where do we get that list of bad behaviors, and how often is that updated?
So there isn't a list. So that's more of a blacklisting sort of way of going through this. I think it really is most customers in their security practice will know this is not supposed to be happening in this application, in which case they would never want to allow that behavior to happen. But in the case that you're unsure, we have a few recommendations on how to do that. So, number one would be search the IP address through VirusTotal or another method that you normally search that IP. Also, look at your known behavior list. And if it's very similar to some of the known behaviors, this is probably just a variation in IP. Something we did recognize on very early on with customers is a lot of the Microsoft updates will cause a wide range of IP addresses, which we couldn't really account for in the beginning stages. So what we did is we created this global service page. And essentially, this has a list of the known IPs for some of the main places that like a Microsoft update happens, or if you have Carbon Black installed, it's reaching out to AWS very often. So this has a list of those known IP addresses, in which case, if you do get an alarm from any one of these addresses within this certain level, so if you get, let's say, this top address from Amazon EC2, as soon as you click allow behavior, it'll never alert on any of these other addresses again, because it knows that you're going to this list for Amazon EC2 addresses. And that's probably with some sort of service update as well. But we have this long list, and we are updating this regularly, but you can also do this for your individual org too. So you can add, if you know a set of IPs that are going to be hit a lot by multiple different services, add it to your global services list, and then you won't get alarms on those whenever there's a change in IP address or behavior.
That's excellent.
Yeah. So that's one of the newest features actually that we had. I also mentioned the support for containers, which was really exciting because I think a lot of customers really wanted that. Let me go back to inventory. So you'll have your container list here. We don't have any uploaded in here. So we'll support both VMs and containers in the services also. And then other than that, let's see. Yeah, I think those are the main portions of AppDefense that you really want to look into. I would say the important parts to think about are, again, the scope creation setup. Like, really understand which VMs perform which actions. But if you don't, let AppDefense teach you that, and then you'll be able to put them in proper services. And then for the alarms, just being able to allow those behaviors from within that alarm, and give yourself a week or two to tune the application after you put it in protected mode before you go ahead and set a remediation action. I'm going to move these back to discovery too, so you can see how that works.
Yeah, either that or some customers may never want to move to the automated remediation. I think that's completely their call, right? I mean, it's.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, like, for example, we had a customer who, and this is kind of where NSX comes into play also, is we had a customer who is interested in, any traffic over port 443 outbound is fine. Anything outside of, and I want an alert on that specifically. So as soon as a 443 new behavior happens, I want to be alerted just so I know what it is. But any other port that's being used for outbound traffic, I want to block that completely. So that's where NSX could be useful to create those custom policies to do that through the service composer in NSX. And you'll only get that integration when you have NSX. But essentially, right now, we would only be able to block all outbound connections, but this will allow you to get a little more granular with your policies as well. But I totally agree. I think there's a lot of customers who are just like, I just want to know what it's doing. I don't want to necessarily block anything. However, there are definitely cases where you don't want any outbound traffic at all for a certain application, and you definitely want to block that. And then I think also for the change in the guest integrity and the AppDefense module, there are customers who are definitely interested in the remediation action on that. And we are one of the only companies that can do that from a hypervisor standpoint as well.
So that would be if somebody turned off the module or something on a server. You could.
Or actually just even change any of the memory bits. If anything changes, then it would be able to create an action on that. And that did happened with a customer of mine actually a few days ago. It was another agent that they were using change something, but they didn't have remediation action on then, but now they have since turned it on, since they know that that agent does change things in the OS. Yeah. So this is the overview. I don't know if there's any questions. Are people sending questions through chat or?
Yeah, I haven't seen any questions piped in yet. Again, anybody can put anything into chat or tweet at me, or you can tweet at me later if you're watching the video, and I can give you Paige's Instagram, I guess, to talk to her. I don't know if that's allowed
I don't
or.
even have my phone on me, so
Um, but
I'll
yeah, do
Instagram
feel
you
free to
later.
ask any questions. I mean,
I think I'll plug too, if anyone's coming to VMworld, there are a few AppDefense sessions, one particularly with me with some of the customers that we've worked on this with over the last few months. And that is a session at VMworld and it's called the Customer Success Stories. So if anyone's going to that, that would be good to see you there.
I think I should get some kind of kickback for allowing that pitch.
Oh, sorry.
I also have a VMworld
You can
session.
come to my session too.
You know,
No, it's not.
no, I'm not gonna pander. Um,
Hey Paige, it's Michael. I wanted to ask you, um, where before maybe you could show a little bit how you where you were showing the different behaviors that were captured, and there were the reputation scores that you were
Oh, yeah.
selecting from, where there was good, bad, and unknown, and all that. Could you like explain where those come from, maybe a little bit, and tell us what they mean?
Yes, thank you for asking. I definitely breezed right over that. Okay, so you'll see these three scores here at the top. And this is what I was talking about earlier in the PowerPoint. Essentially, some of these App Defense will take care of for you. So, for example, the process reputation trust score is very high. The threat score and the trust score both come from Carbon Black, their database, and then the behavior analysis is actually our internal machine learning database. So while our database is a little smaller right now, which is why you'll see the unknown here, essentially just in the subset of processes that we see, it hasn't shown up yet. And that's why I mentioned some of these are going to be, if they're all unknown, that's when you'll have to verify whether you know this process or not. But the other ones, you can rest assured that these are known processes and they've been seen. And I think I should show too. So those three scores are something to keep in mind when you're going through the verified behavior, which is why you don't have to go through this entire list of behaviors, but you can just filter for those, the network behavior and then unknown or bad reputation. Also, let's go through the behaviors. So this is where you actually see the behaviors. And then as soon as you get an alarm, this is where it would show you the known behaviors as well. So essentially it'll show you that explorer.exe is reaching out over port 389 to this address. And that's something that you want to look at when you get an alarm on that, is that it's deviated from this state that you've said is normal, essentially. And it might just be using a vaguely different IP address or slightly different IP address, which again could come from that global services list that I showed you before. So the known behavior list when you're checking alarms is really helpful, I think, to determine whether this can be an allowed behavior or if you want to clear it or create a remediation action after that as well. And then you'll see here too, the trust score and then also the behavior analysis from our ML is verified. Yeah. Did that answer the question, you think? Is that good?
Yeah, thank you. I think that's great. So basically, what you're saying, we don't just make up numbers. We rely on Carbon Black, which is a pretty well-known product in the industry, to analyze the data that we get from the VMs, what's running the processes and their signatures, and they feed data back to us around, how likely is this to be a normal process versus how likely is it to be a threat, and we can automatically filter on that. So makes it a lot easier to identify potential problems, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I should mention too that we integrate with a CB defense. So we have an integration with Carbon Black as well. And if you are using Carbon Black already, you can view the app defense alarms from their console and do remediation based on that from their console, and the same with us. So you'll be able to see your Carbon Black alarms here and then also take action on them from the App Defense console. So I think that we have a pretty tight integration with them, which is, as Michael mentioned, very useful, especially with their reputation.
So with the orgs at the top there, Paige, is it possible to do multiple organizations? I guess you might not be able to click through it because we have some customer stuff in there, but
Yeah, so actually, this is kind of interesting. We did launch our UK data center, and I think the only reason you'd want to do another org is if you have GDRP compliance specific things that you need to keep. So if you need all data to stay, let's, for example, in the UK, then we can create a separate org for you just for the UK. And you would have a drop down and you'd be able to see both orgs to keep things separate. But typically, if you are going to deploy the US and the UK, and if data transfers between and it doesn't matter, then it would just be one org.
well, I'm thinking kind of in terms of partners or managed service providers or something that they could offer this service to customers and have multiple customers in there. Is that a
Yeah, so
possibility?
actually SecureWorks is one of our managed partners right now, and they would be able to manage a customer org. So they would have all of their customer orgs listed, and they'd be able to come in here and do things like provide alarm triaging, especially if you have a lot of applications and things are changing, or you have your internal applications that are maybe changing regularly. That's probably a really good service to look into to have them manage the alarms and triage those for you, and then let you know when something needs your attention. But yeah, they would be able to see multiple ones. It won't be from this drop down though. It'll be if I sign out of this right now down here. When I sign back in, I have the option to choose which org to go into.
Okay, and again, we're not showing that for the integrity of our customers and not showing off their
Yeah,
data
even though
on.
I almost showed that earlier, my PowerPoint. That was not good. But yeah, I think there's definitely some really cool things that you can do here as well. And like I mentioned before, I just think people are surprised at how much information it gives you, and that you'll be able to really fully understand your applications and processes within them after you use it.
Yeah, and I mean, I like the fact that it's a fundamental shift in how we think about security to a degree, as opposed to blocking known bad, allowing known good, and
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
blocking everything else. So, but I do believe it, and I think that you've covered it well, and I think that the process that you have listed there um, is good because yeah, the customers don't know what they're running. They probably have servers with multiple apps on it. They probably have maybe a application that fires up once a month kind of thing. Um, and so to kind of have it monitor for a while and learn like it does is great. The other thing that you kind of showed in the screen was the checksum value as well, so you can actually see if somebody modified a known process file.
Yeah.
That it would still pick it up as being different and alert you on that. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah, any change from the intended state will be alerted on.
Well, that's great. I think that was even a learning experience for me as well. I thought it's always good to kind of see these new products we have, and just so we're aware, this is a SaaS offering, right? This is not an on-prem service. This is
Yeah, and we actually have some really cool things. So if anyone's using any of the other VMware SaaS products, this will start to become a similar look and feel. I can't really say much about it, but we're adding a lot of tools so that you can have more immediate interaction with, say, me or somebody on the team, which I'm very excited about.
You're silent about now until people start spamming that button, I would assume. Um,
I love
that's,
talking to all customers.
no, that was great. That
There's
was
no
great to
such
talk
thing
to.
as spam.
It's great to
Yeah,
talk to
and
customers.
actually, before we end, I just remembered about the Puppet VRA. So these scopes would already be pre-created for you if you integrate with Puppet and VRA. In which case, that would save you a lot of work, especially if you have a lot of scopes. And if you do have a Puppet use case, please reach out to me because I would love to work with you on that as well.
So can you maybe expand on that VRA thing a little bit,
Yeah,
or
so essentially the integration, because you probably are using VRA to automatically deploy certain applications, et cetera, the integration with this would just allow us to see the way you have your application and members set up. And so it would, and with Puppet as well. So it would create scopes and services that are the same as what you have in your vCenter environment with VRA or Puppet.
so when you deploy an application via VRA, it would get automatically assigned into the correct service in AppDefense.
Correct. Yeah. Correct scope and service setup, which, like I mentioned, is like a really super important part of the initial setup. So that would take all the guesswork out of that as well.
Oh no, I think that's a fantastic feature.
Yeah. And I haven't been able to work with anyone using Puppet actively yet, so I would love to do that with someone. Did I lose you guys? Uh-oh.
I'm still here. I don't know what happened to Matt.
No, I was on mute. I was on mute. I was just talking that if you're using Puppet, feel free to Instagram Paige. If not, her email address is on the bottom, so you can spam her at will as well. Actually, I think I'm covering it. I'm covering it on the stream. Actually, they can't see it, so just reach out to me, and I can on Twitter and or through Twitch or whatever, and I can put you in contact with Paige. I think that was
this is
great.
a live photo of me down here too.
Well, like I said, you're actually behind my Twitter, my Twitter, because I have Twitter logo on the stream, so people can't actually.
So my
see
joke
that.
didn't work then.
No, just like when Michael was doing it, I had the badoom going on, but only people on the stream could hear it. So unfortunately, it actually I don't even know if it came through on the stream. It's unfortunate. But anyway, so yeah, no, I think that was great. I think, like I said, I learned a lot. I think that was very informative. I think we went through a lot of very, very cool use cases here, and I can just see this program really expanding, and the interest level in this definitely going up. And there's going to be a lot of fairly big announcements coming around this product around VMworld.
Yes, actually, if anyone's interested and are going to VMworld, you can reach out to me and I can let you know the NDA sessions to attend. Obviously, an NDA would need to be signed for that. But we have so many exciting things coming with AppDefense over the next few months, and they're rolling out pretty quick too. So it's good.
Yeah, so definitely stay tuned. Again, I would have put you to Paige's Twitter to follow along, but maybe I'll proxy some of that stuff for her on my Twitter feed. And yes, like I said, there's some big stuff coming. So definitely
tweet at Matt, and I'll live vicariously through you.
Yes, it's true. Yes.
Or Marcelo. Marcelo keeps on doing the give her an account hashtag for me.
We should. We definitely should. So, you can follow me or Marcelo, who I think is at mbresson on Twitter.
I wouldn't know. I'm not on.
I could look it up. But anyway, just look at tweet at me, or just pay attention to just even the VMware feed. Is there an AppDefense Twitter account that you know of in general, or?
I don't think there's a Twitter account, but we do have a YouTube page, and it has some really cool videos. And I actually did a few videos too on some best practices also. So if you just look up the AppDefense YouTube page, you'll be able to see a lot of good content there.
Okay, that's really good, and I'm assuming some of our announcements will probably get put through there as well if people kind of subscribe to that. So this is definitely a product that is in its I don't know. I guess I'd call it early stages a little bit still, but definitely being expanded and developed very actively, and is going to become a very major focus of our company going forward. So I think it was great to have this demo. I really thank you, Paige, for spending the time with us here. If there's no more questions or no questions at all, like I said, you guys can always
I
put.
was just so clear about everything
No, I
there.
think you summed it all up. I'm the only guy stupid enough to have to ask questions.
No, I
Which is
think that was great.
which
Yeah.
is why I'm here as the uninformed moderator. And then we heard from Michael as well, which was fantastic, back from his journeys across the world. And he was our guest on week 2, I think. We went over HLM and stuff. So next week we're working on some topics still. I'm trying to get some big names in as well. Nothing bigger than Paige, but we'll try.
Yeah,
Um,
you can try.
and so keep an eye on the events page. Follow the Twitch stream if you kind of want notifications for when we do go live and when we update the our events. But it's definitely something that we're going to continue next week. And then after that is VMworld, and we hope to be doing some stuff live from VMworld. Hopefully, we're trying to figure kind of out some of the logistics about that. But it's VMworld is going to be a very busy time for all of us in this industry. So we have some really big announcements coming, some really cool things in the works. So definitely get your ticket if you haven't already. Also, if you're a customer of VMware now and interested in workshops with our team, the customer success team, around AppDefense or VMware Cloud or any of the as a service offerings that we have, feel free to reach out to me, and we might be able to get you guys in for a half-hour meeting with us and members of our business unit and stuff like that to really go over things in detail and get the most out of VMworld for you guys, because that's what we're really interested in is making sure that you guys get as much out of that week as possible that doesn't involve blackjack. I won't help you with that. But yeah, so I think we'll close it out. And again, thank you, Paige. Thank you, Michael, for jumping in there as well. And hopefully see everybody next week. Thanks. Have a great day.
Thanks, Matt. Bye.
Thanks, guys.